So you don't see dentists then succeeding solo practices the way they're doing today in just maybe 10 years?
Correct. There will be solo practices that do become sustained success or become more successful. And I give them the name concierge practice. But concierge practices, you and I have talked about plastic surgeons, we've talked about cybernetics, we've talked about a lot of things, but those are the people that are doing it 24/7. They're socially connected, they set up in wealthy communities, they know the market and how to get to the market. They are going to be concierge. The remaining solo practices trying to compete against the larger entities that we just spoke about, these group practices, your example of Clear Choice, I don't know how they could win.
In medicine, and you mentioned one of them, that integrative medicines were okay. They it was brand new to everybody. But when this major company, I won't mention their name, comes into town with their advertising dollars, and they have like 80 centers across the country, that nobody can compete.
Right.
It literally wipes them out.
Right.
And I'll have doctors say, Randy, I'm going back to Kaiser because I can't
compete
with these guys.
Right.
Nobody wants to pay for what I do.
Right. Now there are concierge physicians, but they are different than most hospitals own their physician practices. And they also have the real estate in which the physician practices occur. So there is a different kind of configuration in medicine than there is in dentistry. Hospitals, if you would move them out and put something else in, it would be equity partners. So they're the ones who are now beginning to finance and purchase these practices and set up these brands and do, who owns Clear Choice?
Yeah. Well, hospitals, by the way, now there's other people figured out. So you got like mini medical groups, and now the hospitals are in trouble.
Right.
In some cases.
In some cases, because they didn't support the mini groups.
So let me ask you this. So what if somebody with the attitude listening to this said, well, we already have 2 major chains or 2 major groups. I don't know if it'll work in my area because it's already being done. What do you say to that?
Oh, that's a great question. And there's always room at the top. An entrepreneur thinks of something that has not yet happened and makes it happen. There is, 50% of the people don't see a dentist in this country, so it's not like there's not a big market share to go after here. It's like, they just need to figure out the economics and how to do it. I have a group practice that only focuses on Medicaid and state support, and they do fabulously well. They do incredibly well because they figured out, because of size, because of the economies of scale, because of efficiencies. In a small practice you need a certain number of people, but those people could do multiple functions in a larger entity and serve more space than they do in a small practice. The same function is done in every small practice. In a larger entity, that same function can be done for 3, 4 providers, not just one provider, which reduces the cost for that particular staffing. But it's the same thing all up and down the line for what their expenses are. So they can match the reimbursement that they get from the government or from the state and still do quite well in terms of their revenues.
So you help them with all areas, not just obviously from the legal to the management part?
The legal gets really complex at this level.
But you connect them with attorneys?
I do.
Okay. So in a way, you help direct or oversee all aspects.
I have a group of people. I can't call it a team. It's pretty close. I have a fabulous attorney who's been doing this for 25 years in terms of dentistry, and also I have a woman who does incredible appraisal. See, when a broker appraises a practice, he has or she has the revenue stream of the sale price in mind. It's like a real estate agent. The higher they sell it, the more they make. So when my appraiser goes in, she doesn't look at that. She looks at what's the real value here. And usually there's a discrepancy between what a broker would purchase sell a practice at and what the real value is. And so when you start to, as this thing begins to expand and people get real about what their practice is really worth when they sell it, that's another key point here. Practices are losing asset value. If you don't have a buyer, an asset becomes a liability.
Okay.
So I have a practice, I've been in it, I'm 60 years old, I've been doing my $1.2 million a year, and I'm looking at the future, and hey, you know what? I think I can get an associate and then turn to partner and then I'll leave. The usual scenario, yes? Okay. Well, you know what? There's no one to buy that practice. And so you have to push the price down and continuously push it down for a single buyer. groups will buy a practice at a higher value because it may have the footprint, it might have the location that they want. So I have a number of solo practices that I assist in finding the right group for themselves to sell their practice and become part of. It depends on the core values of the group. It depends on the location. There's a lot of factors that need to go into this, but I do help people locate themselves in an appropriate group for their exit or succession strategies.